Call this meeting to order. We'll start with roll call. Director Drake.
Liz Drake, Director, District 3.
Hiroshietto, Director, District 5.
Claire Wilson, Director, District 2.
Jeffrey McAnalloy, Director, District 1.
Carol Gregory, Director, District 4.
Tammy Campbell, Superintendent.
And now if you'll all please rise for the presentation of the colors by Federal Way High School JROTC. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. At this time, I entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda.
I move that the Board of Education approve the meeting agenda of April the 25th, 2017 as submitted.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll now entertain a motion for the approval of the required approvals agenda.
I move that the Board of Education approve the required approvals agenda of April 25th, 2017 as submitted.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And now it is time for why most of you are here, our good news announcements.
All right, here we go. I will start as Superintendent Campbell and President McAnalloy make their way down front. And I want to share with you that 2 of our Federal Way High School seniors have been named as Act 6 scholars. Will Salma Ibrahim and Marco Estrada please come forward to be recognized? As they come forward, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what an Act 6 scholar is, because it's something quite amazing. They are selected through a rigorous 3-month competition among more than 1,000 applicants. 99 diverse students were selected from across the country as leaders with a commitment to serve their community and have been awarded a full tuition, full needs scholarship. Salma will be taking her leadership skills to Pacific Lutheran University, joining Act 6 Cadre 10, and Marco will be headed to Northwest University as a member of Cadre 9. This is in recognition of Goal 5 of our strategic plan, persistence to graduation. A huge congratulations to Salma and to Marco. We're proud of our scholars who placed in the Avid Writing Contest. More than 1,700 scholars completed writing, argumentative essays, and citing materials to support their position. These finalists wrote the top essays at each middle school and high school in the district, indicating mastery of writing and strong critical thinking skills as reflected in Goal 3 and 4 of our district strategic plan. The following placements occurred in the middle school category. Please come forward when I call your name. Michael Sin, first place, Illahee. Alicia Rowan, runner-up, Sacagawea. Itzel Cervantes, honorable mention, Sequoia. Andy Kim, honorable mention, Illahee. Eleanor Asen, honorable mention, Illahee. The following placements occurred in the high school category, so please also come forward when I call your name. Lucas David, first place, Federal Way. Ben Suarez, runner-up, Todd Beamer. Ashley Palafox, honorable mention, Todd Beamer. Carolina Nargan, honorable mention, Decatur. Joshua Collier, honorable mention, Decatur. And Justin Tessier, honorable mention, Decatur. Congratulations, scholars. We are proud of you for being engaged, active, critical thinkers. Now you have to smile.
Kieran McDowell, a 5th grade Brigadoon Elementary student, has placed and received a special award at the 60th Annual Washington State Science and Engineering Fair. Kieran, please come forward to be recognized for these accomplishments. Kieran, are you in the house? Okay. Kieran received a first prize trophy and a second prize ribbon for his project, which focused on what is the best second hole size in a coffee lid for liquid to pour smoothly. Fabulous, isn't it? He also received a special award, the Origami Award, for finding math and science in unexpected places. Kieran was among more than 700 presenters from 1st through 12th grades who participated in the Washington State Science and Engineering Fair. This effort is in direct support of the district strategic plan, Goal 3, active learners, engaged, empowered, critical thinkers. Congratulations, Kieran.
Advancing Leadership is a youth leadership program designed for high school sophomores and juniors, where students learn about leadership style, how to work with and inspire others, and to discover many things they did not know about Federal Way. It can be a life-changing experience. Tonight, we are proud to announce Truman's Isaiah Reedy for being named the most transformational by his Advancing Leadership youth peers. Isaiah, please come forward. Are you here? Oh, great.
Excellence runs in the family. Michaela presented the student scholar on the board, so this is
Oh, wow. Congratulations. Being part of an Advancing Leadership youth helps our scholars grow into thriving, confident, responsible individuals. Goal 2 of our strategic plan. Advancing Leadership Youth aims to transform passionate people into impactful leaders, making this award one of the most important an Advancing Leadership Youth scholar can receive. Congratulations, Isaiah, for your recognition as a student leader among your peers.
I'd like to take this opportunity to give a shout out to Sue Bergman of Todd Beamer High School. She was a representative of Federal Way Public Schools at the recent We Day celebration in Seattle.
Oh,
She
yeah.
spoke in front of a packed Key Arena crowd representing Todd Beamer High School and the Titans there for the first time that, as far as I've been to the last 3 We Day celebrations, it's the first time that Federal Way Public Schools actually had one of their schools in the spotlight. So I think we ought to give Sue Bergman a big round of applause.
Good evening. I'm Ashley Barker. I'm the principal at Federal Way Open Doors. Tonight, I'd like to recognize 2 graduates from Federal Way Open Doors. Persistence to graduation is goal 5 of our strategic plan, and these graduates have demonstrated this in spades. I'll first read a summary of each graduate, then I'll call them up individually to be recognized. First, Iris Polito Ramos has been a student in Federal Way Public Schools since 2010, including Todd Beamer. She came to Federal Way Acceleration Academy, now Open Doors, in September of 2015. We've watched Iris grow from a somewhat shy, quiet student to a vibrant young adult. She has a great group of friends at Open Doors. Iris has worked through her state tests and credits. When it became apparent she has the tenacity, not only to complete her high school diploma, but challenge herself for what happens after high school. Iris has been involved in her family cleaning business and often working 40 hours a week to ensure the business remained on track while keeping her commitment to earning her education at Federal Way Open Doors. Iris's next steps include continuing working with the family business as she obtains her state and national language interpreter certification with the goal of speaking English, Spanish, Arabic, and Farsi. We're proud to call Iris our graduate, and we look forward to hearing about the amazing things she does in her life. Next, we have Angela Garcia Salazar. She's been a scholar with Federal Way Public Schools since she started her educational career at Lake Grove in kindergarten. She went on to attend Valhalla Elementary, Kylo Middle School, Thomas Jefferson High School, Federal Way Senior High before coming to Open Doors. Angela has worked hard to complete her education and has never given up. She's one of the first female graduates of Washington Youth Academy in Bremerton. Since that time, she has had a strong mind and spirit. Angela will continue to strive to be a lifelong learner and a positive member in the Federal Way community. Angela also has requested to be an intern, which after her graduation, she'll be able to intern with us at Federal Way Open Doors. Congratulations, Angela. I'll now call each student down individually to be recognized. Iris Polito Ramos. Angela Garcia Salazar. As graduates from Federal Way Public Schools, we'd like the graduates to now turn their tassel from right to left. And I'd like to thank staff and families for this accomplishment. Well done, ladies.
That's the other program I want to see.
Give everybody just a moment to leave, and then we'll move on.
Tell them they don't have to.
Anywhere else. Exactly. Exactly. I know. It's important. It's important work. Our next item on the agenda is our legislative liaison update. Director Drake.
So, no surprises here. The 105-day 2017 legislative session ended on Sunday, to be reconvened the next day by Governor Inslee, because there is no resolution to either the operational or the capital budget. There is so much division in both houses, in both the Senate and the House of Representatives, that even the special session that started on Monday, yesterday, can run up to 30 days. There isn't much optimism that there will be a positive outcome, even within that 30 days. It's being said that every day the 8 legislators that are particularly involved in shaping the budget are meeting every day, trying to work through some of the sticking points. But there is so much division. In fact, I found it very interesting. I read something that I'd like to share just quickly. On Friday, just never been done before, I think, the Senate called to vote the Democrat budget with all the tax, the capital gains tax, the business and operations tax. They called for a vote trying to force the Democrats within the Senate to make a statement about supporting, not supporting the tax revenues that would come from that budget. And obviously the Democrats were not happy with that at all and just refused to vote. But the Republicans in the Senate were trying to make a statement that obviously the proposals being put forward by the Democrats in the House will not pass in the Senate. It won't happen. And that they're trying to get some negotiation going that the Democrats will start dropping these forms of revenue. So it's not looking healthy. Something that I've been talking about each board meeting is Senate Bill 5891 that would delay using science as a graduation requirement for students graduating from high school. That has still not been resolved, and neither has Senate Bill 5639 that would delink all three, science, language arts, math. And what is being said is that people within the Senate and the House are worried that it will be seen as backing off from accountability and high standards for students. And I know that within Federal Way, there are many of our scholars who are going to be impacted by this not being changed. And it's something that in my period as a principal at Thomas Jefferson, because of the misalignment of subjects that are delivered for our scholars, that it's not a fair assessment. So I know that our superintendent has been in touch with our legislators and is trying to make statements, and as am I. And anybody here that feels strongly, please make your voice heard with our legislators so that they know it's something that really will unfairly impact our scholars.
I just want to really add really quickly that we are for accountability, but this particular course is nonsensical in that our courses don't even align to the timing and when our scholars take this. And I most recently learned that more scholars this past testing cycle did not meet standard because somehow maybe the way they're scoring it has changed. We don't know, but I'm reaching out to OSPI to seek answers on that. So absolutely.
So that's really, we wait to hear progress as we move into this special session and just hope that some resolution occurs. Just very briefly, I put together some data and some information about homelessness within our school district. It came from our school district. Three of the board were at the home stretch video last week, and I know that it was very moving. I can speak for myself. I found the video an extremely moving video, and we have 457 total scholars, which is 1.9% of our scholar population are homeless. 212 elementary, 90 middle school, 108 high school scholars. And I put within the detail, after a conversation with Dr. Campbell and the team, we're looking at, and I had some updated information, so about the impact that transportation has upon transporting our McKinney-Vento, our homeless students, scholars, from here to other places to try and give them some stability, which is absolutely what our scholars need, but it costs money. And the state is not reimbursing us to the tune in 2014-15, this isn't on your sheet, I got this information today, to the tune of $256,000 in 2014-15, and then it jumped to $548,000 2015-16, and a low estimate, because we haven't got all the estimates in yet, $550,000 this year. It's impacting our school district, it's impacting our scholars. So I put together, there is one standing legislative priority, a WASDA that was passed in 2016, so this time last year that was passed, that is very generic. It talks about initiating support legislation that supports the state fully funding school districts to cover the costs of supporting McKinney-Vento students. I just, in an ongoing conversation to develop some proposals for us to take to WASDA, I would really like to see us perhaps thinking about, talking about, coming together and putting together a proposal that is around transportation, perhaps. I spoke at some length with one of the school board directors from Tukwila, Dave Larson. Yesterday, we were on the phone for over an hour, just talking about all the finer points of how homelessness in our region is exploding and how it is negatively impacting our scholars. And the work that we really need to be doing with our legislators to draw attention to the situation that we have developing. And one way to do that is to put together proposals. And he is working with Spokane at the moment on resources, and there is money provided to districts to help identify homeless scholars. They don't want us to know they're homeless. They hide it. And if we don't have the resources that we need to identify and support and help, then the situation that's an already terrible situation just gets worse. So he's working on resources with Spokane, and then will share it with us for us to support, hopefully. And what I would love is for us to consider transportation as something that we could really get our teeth into. So that's what I'm putting forward.
Can I make it? Or go ahead. Just to clarify for people listening, speak to what McKinney-Vento does in the area of transportation, why it's so expensive.
In conversations, I'm learning so much. In conversations, and perhaps our business department can help me, there is a very mathematical model for identifying the costs of transportation. And McKinney-Vento scholars, if they are either homeless or their housing situation is inadequate, it is incumbent upon us as a district to provide some stability in where they go to school, so that, and it could be across districts, and sometimes and often is across districts. The district then, it's incumbent upon them to pay for the transportation, and sometimes it's taxis, sometimes it's not always a bus, because we don't necessarily have buses available. We don't necessarily have sufficient bus drivers to be able to do this, and so the cost is enormous. And in part because of the way transportation costs are figured out, they're figured out on a traditional from your door to the school and back again. Well, that's not how it looks for a homeless scholar, a McKinney-Vento scholar. Does that answer it?
Director Wilson.
I also know for a long time there have been issues. It's so much greater than our district, as you said, and it's really a cross-system and a cross-sector issue. I think the other piece is the data that isn't included is, and I said it during our work study, but is our early learning homeless families, which are not covered by K-12 McKinney-Vento unless there are additional dollars available or a district has money to spend, which they traditionally don't. But that there's been a lot of work as homeless being a special needs population. And in the regional transportation system, there's been lots of conversation around that. And one of the biggest issues, I think, is when you have one bus with one child that travels across 3 or 4 districts to go back and forth. And so there's been a lot of work regionally around how we might try to coordinate services on that transportation, and that's been happening, I can tell you, for the last 8 years. So if we can get something going that would actually stick and move forward, that would be wonderful. I think the other caution and issue of concern is anytime you're transporting children under 12, especially if you think about anything other than student pupil transportation services, you're dealing with issues where you don't have the issues of safety like fingerprinting and background checks, because what we also found in looking at transportation of taxis and taxi services across the region is they differ from system to system. And so if we really, there's just so many layers of things. And so I think, again, we also have to think of housing, but as a district, when we think about what one thing we could do to support the stability of our scholars, I think it is making sure that school is a home and an away game. So I think it's really important, but there's so much that has to be tackled related to this.
I want to personally thank Director Drake for doing your homework on this one and doing a lot of digging into the data and framing up the needs in such a very eloquent and clear way. And thank you for additions, Director Wilson. But really, thank you, Director Drake.
Just one last comment that I found interesting. There's the McKinney-Vento Federal Act, and we receive, the state of Washington, not we, the school district, Washington State receives $950,000 as a group, as an amount of money from Washington, D.C. That is the only money, that is the only money designated.
Now it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could change in October.
It could change.
And
but
that 950,000 only goes to 9 districts. We are one of the 9 districts that receives it. But my biggest issue with all of this, as we discussed putting a proposal forward, is that this is basic education.
Yeah.
And it is actually levy dollars that are paying to take care of the difference between what we receive from a federal perspective and what we're doing to take care of our scholars.
Right.
So, Director Drake, I'd ask if you're willing to talk to Director Larson and talk to Director Alvarez and Highline, and the three of you, to see if we can put something together and bring it forward to then for us to approve to
Yeah.
move forward to the legislative committee in June.
I think the plan is, last board meeting showing the different standings, this one coming up, and obviously I'm not trying to push this through. This is just an area that's really I feel quite passionate about.
It's growing and it's a huge
Yeah.
need. So.
And the data
Thank you.
shows it's a need here
It
in
is.
Federal.
And I think we started the work last year, and so I think it would also support the standing positions of our ledge policy and how we do that in WASDA by continuing to put it forward. So it certainly needs to be kept in the forefront.
I'll come back with updates.
Perfect, thank you. All right, next item is public comment. So there are blue sheets on the back table for public comment. If you would like to comment, you fill out a sheet and then turn it up here to my right. And so we have 3 comments this evening. Thomas Simmons.
Good evening, Board President McAnally, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. I am humbled that I'm actually here again to talk to you a little bit about what we accomplished with the ELA, English Language Arts Curriculum Selection Committee, the work of which took approximately an entire academic year. The steps that we took, the very careful and cautious steps that we took, making sure that our work was aligned with current practice, was also aligned with the concepts of critical thinking that our scholars are going to need in the future, and also that it's also aligned with Dr. Campbell's strategic plan. And I am very, very delighted and very thankful that I had the opportunity to be on that committee, that I had to work with my 22 colleagues. I'd also like to thank one of my colleagues at Decatur, Rachel Pulu, who actually piloted
Yeah.
2 of the curricula. And it was largely it was to an extent on her input that we concluded which one we should choose. We also carried the weight of the fact that we were thinking about this for colleagues that were going to be coming into the profession. And all of that was very, very carefully considered. And it was a privilege and an honor to be on that committee. I'd like to thank Sean Simpson for inviting by way of an email, which went out to many teachers throughout the district, and Stacy Hoffman as well, for the work that they did in guiding us in a very, very even and very light-handed way. And again, it was a privilege and an honor. And I thank all of you.
Thank you. Shannon Harvest.
Good evening, Board President McAnalloy, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. My name is Shannon Harris. I am a resource English language arts teacher at Decatur High School. It was an honor to be part of the ELA Adoption Committee, as all too often our students who receive support services aren't part of the pilot programs. I've taught in many districts since beginning my career, and I'm sure that we're all aware of the fact that across the country, not just in Federal Way, literacy rates are at an unfortunate low. It was with this in mind that as we went through and piloted the programs, Inquiry by Design really caught my eye. It takes the pedagogy that we've been using for countless years and turns it on its head. It allows students who've struggled for years, for their entire education, to take those weaknesses that they've often felt have dragged them down in schools and to actually take those weaknesses and turn them into their strengths. I feel very privileged to have had the honor to be part of this selection committee, and I thank you.
Thank you. Dia Bailey.
Good evening, Board President McAnalloy, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Tammy Campbell. I'm Dia Bailey, and I'm the instructional coach at Federal Way High School. And I wanted to come before you today to act as a voice for some of my teachers who were able to participate in the pilot. So the first statement that I'll read is from Colin McDaniel, who is one of our advanced pathway teachers, teaches Cambridge and also 10th grade. And he says, "What I find encouraging about the IBD curriculum is its potential to bring greater academic integrity to Federal Way's high school English program. There is integrity in the rigor of the text and flexibility in scholars' personal responses, as long as there are descriptive rubrics and exemplars to support high academic achievement. There is integrity in the process-driven rather than the outcome-driven pedagogy. There is integrity in the student-centered learning community that teachers will build in their classrooms, one that still needs an intellectual and relational teacher as its leader. Most encouraging is that the curriculum focuses on developing a growth mindset in our learners." The next statement I'd like to read is from Dina Pavluk, who is our ELL department head. "The IBD curriculum allows an entry point for all students. It gives an opportunity to see scholars as learners. It allows the scholars to be the guide in their learning process in regards to the text, so that they are the ones that are picking out the words and concepts that they want to focus on. It challenges students to make learning meaningful based on their prior experiences, in terms that it reinforces the schema that the student has and gives them an access point with their starting base of knowledge. So, for example, in part of the curriculum for the 9th grade, they have a reading about Steve Jobs. And so she says, so students may not know who Steve Jobs is, but they do have an entry point because they know Apple products, Apple software, and so on, so that they do have something to add to the conversation. If I have 1 minute. Oh, phew. All right, and the last statement that I'd like to make is from Wes Van Dyne, who is our a 9th grade ERLA pilot teacher. So ERLA gives me, which is the Independent Reading Level Assessment, ERLA gives me a system for assessing the reading needs of my students and then creating an action plan that is individually tailored towards them. I enjoy being able to have one-on-one conversations with my students about what they're reading, and for both of us to see that at the same time how their skills are growing. We've gone for a long time without a literacy program in this district, so having access to this resource will prove to be very useful. It isn't perfect, and there are inequities in students' experiences, especially dependent on class size, but overall, ERLA has been helpful to our 9th graders as we attempt to close the gap in their achievements in reading. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is superintendent comments. Dr. Campbell?
Well, it has been a busy last few weeks, and one of the things I want to highlight is the community forums, and I want to thank the community who are coming out to hear information about our facilities, specifically in the area of how we have facilities that are aging. And for example, at our elementary, we know that our elementary schools are about 1,000 scholars over capacity right now. And so we've had lots of community members who've come out, talked about what their interests are. They're, for the most part, very supportive of us going out for a bond in the coming months, recognizing that this will be a no tax increase bond, but a bond to really renovate, remodel, modernize our facilities, as well as expand capacity. On that note, I want to talk about a concern that I have for a new multi-housing development for affordable housing that's going to be on 31665 Military Road. I've just learned about this. It's going to be, the proposal is by Devco, the same company that has built the other multifamily housing that we see around Federal Way. This will be an unincorporated King County. Right now, King County is in the early stages of hearing this recommendation. And as a school district, we're going to really raise some strong concerns because, as I tell you right now, we have 1,000 scholars over in our elementary schools. We are crowded, and by the time we actually start to, when the bond passes, we are still a couple years out from relief. And we will be talking to the person who is the lead on this, Kevin LeClaire. The reason I found this out, a citizen told me about this. We weren't necessarily contacted about it. So we're framing up a response right now. I want to be clear, this isn't about affordable housing. This isn't about any form of housing. We simply are crowded. And we just are at a really critical point in terms of how many more scholars we can try to squeeze into very cramped facilities. So if you have a voice, we'd like you to help us with this. But I want the public to know, as soon as we found out, we're now making the case and talking about why this isn't a good idea right now. And I also like to invite you to come out to our community forums that are occurring tomorrow. We will have a community forum, and of course, now that I forget, where will it be, Sally? At the ESC, and then the one on Thursday will be at Todd Beamer High School. So please come out and hear the extensive work, the 25 hours, this committee of over 80 community leaders, city officials, as well as district leaders. They've come up with a really powerful recommendation, and there's a lot of data behind what we've done, and we've really done our due diligence. But we're going to need our community to rally around our schools so that we can continue to modernize our facilities in the same way that the communities around us and cities around us have done, because they've approved these bonds to continue to build and renovate their schools. The other piece that I want to share is our Heroes Banquet that we had on Saturday. That was incredible. We honored 45 plus community-based organization. Each school had one community-based organization who had made a significant impact on their learning. And we call it, this is our second annual Heroes Banquet. Our first one was last year. And it's a way for us to give back to the community. It's a way to showcase the incredible things that are happening. You have community-based organizations who've donated food and backpacks. You have community-based organizations who have donated a reading space. You have community-based organizations who provide food for families over the holidays. They are leaning into our schools, and we want to be good stewards to celebrate their hard work and efforts. And so this is something we'll do annually. It was very, very empowering and impactful. So if you were there, I know I heard from so many people who appreciated that the district takes the time to do that kind of recognition and celebration. The other thing that I want to talk about is WE Day. So I attended WE Day with Directors Drake, Director Eto, Director Wilson, and Director Gregory. Sorry, I'm thinking about Governor Gregory in a minute here. I'm about to share that. And it was pretty inspiring to see so many of our young people doing incredible things. And as Director Eto talked about, one of our staff was recognized. But more importantly, there were scholars all over the city. And these people, young people, are innovating. They're inventors. They're thinking critically. It was just absolutely empowering to see so many young people. And we got to see Russell Wilson. And who else did we get to see? Sierra.
Buzz Aldrin.
But that's right. Doug Baldwin. We got to see some pretty impressive people, and for them to tell our scholars that they're doing incredible things. More importantly, we had a special visitors in our district, and we had two leaders, one scholar from Kenya, as well as a woman who started a girls' school in Kenya. And a lot of these young people don't have opportunities to be schooled. And this one young scholar told the story of how in her family she wasn't going to be able to go to school, that she was to be married off and circumcised. And she said she didn't want to do that. She wanted to go to school. So one night she decided to swim across the river to a school. She didn't know what was across the river was a jungle. She stayed in this jungle for 2 months, finally got out of the jungle and found another adult who helped her to get into school. She's now in her first year of college, excelling and doing incredible things. Her name was Williter, and she spoke to the larger audience at WE Day. It was pretty empowering and inspiring. And so we took her to Federal Way High School. We walked her through our engineering labs there. She got to see the CNC machines and all the things that our scholars experience here. And you could see by her facial expressions she had not seen anything like that. So it's something I want to continue to remind our scholars here at home how fortunate we are and how important education is. The last thing I want to share is that Federal Way will be one of 2 districts that have been identified by the Washington Alliance for Better Schools to participate in something called Challenge Seattle. We will identify 5 teachers, high school teachers, and Renton School District as the other district will identify 5 teachers who will spend 3 weeks either at Boeing or Microsoft doing something called an externship, where they will learn about what the career is requiring of the workers in those career fields. Then they'll write a unit that they'll integrate in what they teach throughout the year. If this goes well, we'll send more teachers so that they're learning what it is the workplace needs for our scholars. So that learning is project-based, science, technology, engineering, and math. You've heard us talk about that. And we'll have more teachers who are participating. Specifically, math, science, and CTE teachers are the target group that will be reaching out to do this. But Federal Way was identified because of all the things that they're hearing that we're doing in the area of science, technology, engineering, and math, specifically STEM, and how focused we are in those areas. So more to come on that. Once the teachers have finished their experience, I would envision them coming and doing a presentation here, sharing what they've learned and how they'll integrate their learning into what they're doing in the classroom every day. So as you can see, we have been pretty busy.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. Right now it's board comments. Director Drake, would you like to start us this evening?
Federal Way is really humming, and so much of it is so positive. I see Stacy Lucas out here, and I just want to say what a fabulous time we had when Jay Inslee, our governor, visited Nautilus, and the scholars were so proud to be there welcoming him. And then we went on a tour of quite a few different classrooms, talking about hands-on project project-based learning. It was amazing. I think it was a first grade class that we were in, and the scholars were doing a presentation of marketing and talking about different inventions that they were presenting to the class to sell, to market. And then the scholars were actually voting on the projects, and it was a thoroughly, such a positive time, and so wonderful to see the level of project-based, technology-based learning that is taking place in our schools. And obviously next year we are going to be focusing, STEAM will be a big focus for Nautilus next year. So it was great to be part of that. Really tremendous. And then I'd just like to mention, I'm trying to keep off the other things that you talked about, but the facility, the community meetings around the facilities, it was, I've been to 2 of them so far, and the authenticity of the people that are on the facilities committee. I've been very privileged to be able to be part of the facilities committee and be part of the in-depth, really digging down deep into what Federal Way is as a school district, what our needs are. And then each presentation, different members of the facilities committee have spoken. One last week was a custodian who knows Federal Way probably better than most people because he's in the buildings each day. He oversees the buildings. Parents have spoken on behalf of why it is we need to be passing a bond. This isn't, wouldn't it be nice? This is crucial. This is critical for our scholars. So it's really powerful what we're doing. And then just really briefly, I had the privilege to be asked to be on a team accrediting the Puget Sound Skills Center last week. And it was exhausting. We were 14 hours last Tuesday, 7 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, observing and just looking at the whole program. And I thought, I was asked because I used to be principal at TJ and work closely with the Skills Center. The things that are available for our scholars at the center, there's the Puget Sound High School. There's a new program, Wells. The opportunities for our scholars and the possibility for me to actually see what's going on was really, really good. So great couple of weeks.
Director Eto?
I want to give some appreciation to those public speakers because they kind of give a prelude to the discussion we're going to have later on the English language arts. It really is a day where we're going to close the loop on public comments that we got late in February, where it was the counter narrative about a lot of concerns that we weren't going to use novels, and it's clear that we are. And so I'm glad that we're closing this loop because one of the things that was important when we first hired the superintendent was to make sure that the board was communicating with the public and the public felt that there was closure when they brought things to the board's attention. Just so it's not lost amongst the many folks that did talk that day, there was one parent who spoke about the urgency in getting injections for her child and the delay that she felt was too long in terms of response from King County Fire. And so hopefully there's something in the works there that'll address that issue. I did want to talk a little bit about the homelessness crisis. I didn't realize going before that film called Homestretch, which many of you might have seen on public television before. It follows 3 students who are basically high school students that are homeless. The thing is, though, it didn't touch on the 70% of children who are actually within the K through 8 range and also have this homelessness problem. And although transportation costs are an issue, can you imagine having to get up at dark 30 in Federal Way and then having to be transported to, let's say, Enumclaw, where your home school might be? It's a tremendous burden on these children. And so really, it would be a huger impact if we could solve the housing crisis. And so when I looked at the homeless task force report that was given to Mayor Murray in Seattle, when you look at that, it's really, the numbers are small enough that it's not a space problem and it's not a money problem, but as you kind of read through it, there's a problem with liability. And so if we try to open up churches or we try to open up public spaces, there's liability concerns that come into play. And so that's where a school district, although we provide those transportation costs, it's a big problem that we need the cities, the state involved in order to really be able to move the housing issue closer so these kids don't have to get up so doggone early to get to school. Cost, I understand, for transportation is an issue, but there's something more that needs to be done around this. It was really a compelling film, and I'm glad we were able to see that. But it is a huge, huge problem. I was shocked that we had it maybe in the 200 range, and now it's in the 500 range. So it's a growing problem that we really need to solve.
Thank you. Director Wilson?
I wanted to show and share my continued appreciation of the professional learning that's happening in the district around racial equity. That's being facilitated by PEG. And I was able to attend a portion of the recent Cabinet Leadership Day of Learning, and just want to thank that group for always being okay about kind of letting you walk in and be part of that. I just think it's a critical piece of work each of us need to do as we think about how we're going to eliminate the opportunity gap that exists, and how we continue to think of our scholars as being capable, competent, and able to really reach the stars. I also have been thankful for the attendance at community forums, and I appreciate the word that has gone out by the district and the use of social media and all the other ways they've gotten the word out. The other thing I want to really point out is the responsiveness that from each forum to the next, if there's something that's been noted that's worthy of adding, it's been added. So, for example, the first forum, there was conversation around the pictures of if people could only see. In the next forum, boom, there were pictures of actually the buildings that were being spoken about in that particular area. Another one was, the idea of how it is that we give the points that are really important about the overcrowding, about the safety issues. And boom, the next time we come, and I have it, but I lost it. Boom, 3 issues that are really important in order to be able to talk to your neighbor or to anyone else about what's happening in our community. And that, to me, is a way that we continue to build momentum, and we build deep understanding about the urgent needs that we have in our community. So I appreciate the work on district's behalf. Director Eto mentioned the opportunity to come together on the 19th. Dr. Eto. Yeah, you got a degree in about 5 minutes. To view the home stretch, and I think the great part about viewing it in a public setting was the diversity of individuals there, from scholars to family members to agency providers, and also the opportunity to have a panel of current practitioners working with homeless youth talk really about the situation. I think it is so much deeper than transportation, and it's so much deeper than a house, and it's just so many things that are involved when we think about drugs and alcohol, when we think about mental health issues, and we think about domestic violence, and those are social issues that we just need to wrap our arms around, and there's lots of things that are happening. I know our small home from Federal Way is up in Seattle, and there's a bit of a conversation going because it's currently in an encampment or in a homeless place where drugs and alcohol are allowed. And the conversation is, do you house people first and then deal with the issues they have, or do you help people deal with issues and then find them a place to live? Most people on the street can't stop a practice or an addiction until they know they've got a safe place to live. So it's just a huge issue. And I know from my own experience, we have families camping at the KOA, we have families at our state parks here. Because of where we're located, we have many options for families to be where we may not even know they are. I just think it's something we need to continue to deal with. I was at a WASDA board meeting last weekend. There's nothing better to do on the weekends. What I've appreciated about the WASDA board, but also with our new superintendent, that he spends every Friday with us. So we start at 3 o'clock and usually go till 9 o'clock at night and are dealing with all things that have to do with the State School Board Directors Association. But having that opportunity to have constant conversation with him about his thinking and his movement forward and about what he's doing at the state office, I think is very helpful. He talked about ongoing reorganization and staffing when he looks at alignment. They talked about the Professional Education Standards Board alignment that's happening within OSPI, trying to make sure that everyone is doing something, but that there's some roll and go clarity about who's doing what. But then also talked about not wanting to have a punitive nature and having a relentless relationships with policymakers, and that I think is critically important, is the relational pieces. And then the only other thing is we talked about whole child, we were talking about attendance and all of that, and he threw out a statistic that was a bit startling to me, and I thought I'd share that with the board. And that is that 63% of Washington student dropouts drop out in their 12th grade. And that's 11 to 12,000 students. So we're losing 63% of our dropout students in Washington in their senior year. So we continue to know that we need to catch students early on, scholars early on, check in with them early and often, but we also have to be relentless in our pursuit of making sure they're supported all the way through the end. Some of those, 63%, are retrieved in the 5th year, but many are not. We Day, what can I say? I got to spend time with Wilta and Carol, and I will say when I asked Wilta what her most amazing thing was about coming to Federal Way, she talked about the engineering lab. So that was very exciting. And I will say that we spent the day with 16,000 youth from across the state, and in the bags were this We Day book, and Director Etto, you might want to look on page, I'll share my book with you, where we have Caleb Dawson. It's a spotlight on a quiet hero. And Caleb was one of our first Federal Way students when We Day was launched in 2011. To get on stage and to be on stage for his work around We Scare Hunger. And in the first year, they collected over 20,000 pounds of food and had the largest single most donation to the multi-service center that had ever been given in our city. So because We Day launched at Federal Way High School, it has continued to be a strength and to be a service not only to students and to our community locally, but also globally. And we are recognized, Dr. Campbell was recognized, Randy Kazar was recognized at the Educators Breakfast, because I think people see the importance of connecting youth to what's happening in the world. And I am thrilled with our 24-hour community service requirement, because it just is in support of all that we're doing. So it was indeed a good day. Heroes Banquet, what can I say? The only thing I did do is pass on a thank you to Dr. Campbell and to Cassie Swenson from a hero that I drove with in the morning, that said in her 19 years of working and being a volunteer in this district, never has she ever felt so honored as she did that morning. I was wowed by everything, from the time we walked in the door to the program to the and the opportunity for people to connect with each other was fabulous, and I look forward to the 3rd annual Heroes Banquet. So, thank you.
Thank you. Director Gregory?
Just to piggyback on the We Day conversation, as you know, We Day recognizes those students who have done work in their community. And many of the schools have We clubs, and that's where a lot of this work is organized. And in fact, this is an international program. I didn't realize that until I was made aware that that Kenyan school, girls' school, that we had the opportunity to have a visitor from, is actually sponsored by the Weed Aid program. It's two men who put this idea together, and it's gone internationally, and it's a real opportunity. And I think the most exciting thing about the day, picture, 16,000 middle school and high school students in an arena. Now, that was frightening to me at the beginning, because I'm thinking they're gonna be sitting there for 6 hours at least. It was the most culturally appropriate and age-appropriate program I have ever been to. Those scholars were engaged all the time, and they just did an amazing job of keeping their energy levels high, getting them quieted down by exercising and dancing, and then, really being serious at times. And I found it to be, I think that was the most exciting thing for me, was that this is an organization that really understands the age and the appropriateness of their work with the age group they have selected, and it was truly amazing. Couple other things. I want to recognize Liz for the work she has done on the legislative, what are you, our representative? Yeah, our legislative liaison. This is not easy, and Liz is not one who has a background in many of the issues before the legislature, and I know she spends untold hours studying and researching to make sure that the information that she gives out to our public is in the best interest of our school district and accurate. And I congratulate you for the tremendous job you're doing. It's really great. Some of us have been around a long time, and those, we've heard these issues, but to really understand them the way you do is fantastic. And I also want to comment on the educators that were here today, or tonight. When we started this year, my comment was that this is going to be a very difficult year. We're going to see a lot of change. We hired someone who is very good at change and very good at the change process, but the key to it has, how do you engage the rest of us, the board, the students, and the staff, and I think you've done an amazing job of that. But I congratulate you for your willingness to give your extra time to do this hard work of really changing how you do business when you adopt a new curriculum. It isn't easy. It's a lot of hours and a lot of work, and I really appreciate it. I'm amazed this year at how many people have jumped in to help with all kinds of things. And for me, I think that's the proudest part of what is being accomplished this year is, and this goes to our leadership, and everyone seems, while we don't always like what's happening, we understand the value of the work and have really pitched in. And I congratulate everybody, including us, who have had 50 hours of retreats, at least. And just one final thing. I live in the north end of the district. If you live in the north end of the district and you heard what the superintendent said about this apartment house, think about this. It is near 320th and Military Road. Can you imagine 200 more units driving on Military Road at about any time of the day or night? You can't. You'll just be sitting. But so those are the kinds of issues that we have to address. How do you even get the kids to school when you've got the public on the road as well. So anyway, I'm just very pleased with how things are going, and I know we still have a lot of hard work to do in a very short time as the school year ends, but thanks to everybody.
Thank you. So Principal Lucas. She's not listening. So I just want to congratulate you and your staff. Bravo for a job well done. Governor Inslee left feeling pretty positive about our district and the work that you're doing. I know that you, this is part of your heart and soul and where you want to go, and it was evident as we toured at the work that's already happened in the first year. And Governor Inslee actually shared that with the editorial board at the Mirror for about 15 minutes and how impressed he was with the work that we're doing in this district. So thank you and your staff for all that you did to represent Federal Way well. I did visits this week, or the last 2 weeks, with Dr. Campbell to Mirror Lake and to Truman. And as we talk about facilities, part of our conversation at Mirror Lake was safety. As we begin to talk and walk through, as these schools were built sometime between 40 and 65 years ago, we didn't have the same issues that we do today, right? We all left our doors unlocked and our cars unlocked and didn't have anything to worry about. Our schools were built in the same vein. And it's time for us, based on 2017, to really dig in as a district and look at how we can modernize and make sure that all of our scholars are in the safest place they can be, as well as what that does to our own economic development within our city, right? Nobody's going to mention that, but when the schools thrive, then our community thrives and the economic development does well. And so it behooves all of us to make sure that we look at what's going on. I do want to thank the staff and all of the members of the Facilities Committee. As I've watched, Director Drake and I have been board observers through the process, and I know it's been a lot of work on a lot of parts. And so I just want to thank everybody for that. The Heroes Banquet, it was pretty emotional last year. It was even more phenomenal this year. As we begin to look at all of the individuals that truly lean into our district and what they're doing to support our scholars on a day in and day out basis. It is pretty phenomenal, and that's what we need. And it was great the way we've recognized them and made sure that they're honored, because it does make a big difference in what our daily lives are within this school district. I want to mention that board recognition, May is just around the corner. It starts next week, and so board recognition will happen for all 39 schools in the month of May. The first one will be next week at Federal Way High School for all of those schools that are in that feeder pattern. So just want to make sure we mention that. And that's the only comments I have this evening. All right, next item on the agenda is Executive Limitations 3. Dr. Campbell?
At this time, I would like to have Sally McLean, our Chief Maintenance and Operations and Maintenance, and sharing with you a little bit about what we're doing to ensure that we're in compliance with this executive limitation. As you know, finance and operations are critical to the infrastructure, and it behooves us to have processes that ensure we're being accountable and fiscally responsible. Take it away, Sally.
Thank you. Good evening, President McAnalloy, members of the board. Thank you for that introduction, Dr. Campbell. It's my pleasure this evening to share with you the Executive Limitation 3 related specifically to financial and asset protection. As you all know, the purpose and the goal of this evening, under the board's direction of policy governance, there are ends or goals that the superintendent is directing all of our work around within various executive limitations. This executive limitation are the things that we can't violate. So my goal tonight is to share the interpretation and the rationale for the 5 major components that serve as evidence of the superintendent's compliance with EL3. And of course, all of this work is also framed around the superintendent's strategic plan and our various pillars. For the audience's edification, these policies, again, for Executive Limitation 3, focus on ensuring that the board's priorities established within the district's ends policies and the superintendent's strategic plan are supported through the administration of prudent financial planning and administration while maintaining the long-term financial health of the district. As a reminder, the superintendent's strategic plan and all of we own this strategic plan, belongs to us, has 5 major goals. And I think most of you have seen those in various arenas, so for the sake of time, not to diminish them, but to continue on, you will know that this executive limitation also supports those 5 goals.
And I would say the district strategic plan, it's everybody's
It's
strategic
everybody's, absolutely.
Yep.
Which is what I meant to say.
Just weighs on my shoulders thinking it would be mine.
It is everyone's.
Sorry.
We all own it, absolutely. The 5 components of executive limitation include financial and budget planning, budget execution, which is more commonly referred to as accounting for the plan, the overall financial condition of the district, asset protection related to risk management, and real property and facilities protection. So in terms of preparing annual budgets, as a reminder, annual budgets are prepared for all 5 funds. Those 5 funds are the general fund, the capital projects fund, the transportation vehicle fund, the debt service fund, and the associated student body fund. Those are prepared in accordance with state law, and we continue to use a conservative budgeting philosophy to maintain our strong financial condition. There is a conversation scheduled at the board meeting on June 13th in order to share at that point in time the superintendent's recommendation related to 4 of the 5 funds and provide an update in regards to what you've been hearing from Representative Drake and others in regards to where we may be with the general fund based on the state budget. Again, our budgets they secure financial soundness for current and future years, and as we move into the general fund budgeting for this year, a real focus on Pillar 4 and providing data to continue to allow us to align our resources to focus those resources in the best way possible so that we can all achieve the results we want in the 5 goals that we want in the strategic plan. The second component around budget execution is related again to the accounting of the work that we do. Our records are audited annually by the State Auditor's Office. The 2015-16 audit is coming to a close, and since this was originally written, the exit conference is actually scheduled for next week on May 3rd, which I believe board members should have received an invitation to. And again, no exceptions are expected at that point in time. The third section has to do with our financial condition. The area that we talk about in terms of evidence of compliance is our continued commitment to Administrative Policy 6024, which requires a committed fund balance between 3 and 5%. Both the financial reports for 2015-16 and the 16-17 budget that was adopted and that we're operating within this year continue to be in compliance with that policy. Asset protection, when we talk about risk management, we are part of a coalition of schools that belong to the Washington School Risk Management Pool. And every year, the risk management pool targets a particular area for school districts to participate in a research-based risk assessment. And as we go through the remainder of this year and the fall of next year, that particular risk assessment will be found on is focused on sexual abuse in schools, both the prevention and the protection. So it looks at our policies and our procedures and evaluates our practices. Based on your score, you ultimately end up with a discount, you hope, on your insurance policies, not to mention protection. The last component of this is around real property and facilities protection. You have heard a lot this evening about the Facilities Planning Committee, which is certainly working towards sustaining the long-term investment that our voters have made in our 39 sites and 3 additional facilities. And as part of that process, we conduct the annual asset preservation program, which the board saw a couple board meetings ago on their consent agenda to ensure that we are maintaining buildings in accordance with state guidelines and again, taking care of that taxpayer investment. So that is just a really quick overview of all of the various pieces that we do to ensure that our finances and assets are protected in the district.
Great. Any questions, board members? Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
And this time I would entertain a motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve that EL3 financial planning, budget execution, and financial condition is in compliance.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Can I just make a real quick statement? You know, when you think about our strategic plan goals and what we're trying to accomplish, if we don't have our resources aligned and have really sound fiscal practices, as well as someone who is in a leadership role who understands that, this becomes very difficult. And I really want to take my hat off to Sally, as well as Jerry Carlson, because between the two of them, they have really positioned us to be responsive and to have our strategic plan and our resources aligned. There are districts around us that they're cutting right now. There are all kinds of things that are happening from a financial standpoint, and I know that. I just want to tell you, thank you, Sally, for your leadership in this area.
Thank you very much.
All right, next item on the agenda is the Yale presentation. Dr. Campbell?
So at this time, I would like to invite our Chief Academic Officer, James Crawford, Sean Simpson, up to the podium. Stacy Hoffman, our 612 ELA Social Studies Facilitator. Stacy not here. James Diggins, an English Language Arts teacher at Decatur High School. Shannon Harris, Decatur High School teacher. Jamarcus Springfield, a TJ High School English Language Arts teacher. And Dia Bailey up to the podium. As you know, unless we have solid, high-quality materials in front of our scholars, high-quality resources in front of our teachers, teaching and reaching every single scholar becomes very difficult. And I'm excited to hear from this group. They're going to tell you the process that we use, because as Director Gregory talked about in her earlier comments, process is very important. Product is important, but process is equally as important. And they're going to talk to you about process and the product that we're going to be utilizing to ramp up our literacy rates across the district K-12. So take it away, Chief Academic Officer James Crawford.
Good evening, Board President McAnalloy, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. We are pleased tonight to present to you the English Language Arts 9-12 adoption. With me presenting tonight are Sean Simpson, Coordinator of Secondary Instruction, Stacy Hoffman, 612 English Language Arts and Social Studies Facilitator, as well as 3 of our high school teachers and an instructional coach who served on the adoption committee and/or piloted resources. The English Language Arts 9-12 adoption is a culminating commitment of our work in Federal Way Public Schools to ensure a guaranteed and viable curriculum in all of our English Language Arts core classrooms, grades 9 through 12. A guaranteed and viable curriculum is a key equity strategy in closing the achievement gap. The goals for tonight include the following. 1, share the alignment of our theory of action, 100-day entry plan, sub-ends 1 and 2, and the connection that these have in correlation with the Federal Way Public Schools strategic plan and a guaranteed and viable curriculum. 2, review the research that makes a compelling argument for a guaranteed and viable curriculum. 3, provide a high-level overview of scholar data that demonstrates a need to provide high-quality resources and professional learning that all key stakeholders around English Language Arts can be involved in. 4, share the journey of the adoption process to select high-quality materials, and in order to ensure high support and success, a 2-year phased for full implementation. And last, communicate the budget for this adoption. To begin, I'll be sharing the alignment of our English Language Arts adoption to our theory of action. Dr. Campbell's 100-day entry plan subheads 1 and 2 and our strategic plan. First, our theory of action is the cornerstone of our systemic approach to ensure scholars are at the center of receiving high-quality learning experiences. This starts with our central office leadership coordinating and aligning systems in order to support principals as instructional leadership to sponsor the work of the English Language Arts high school adoption and work alongside certificated staff, classroom teachers, and specialists with powerful professional learning to ensure all scholars achieve success at high levels. Second, Dr. Campbell's 100-day entry plan created a pathway for Federal Way Public Schools to prioritize scholars, teachers, and leaders' needs across the system. An outcome of this systemic focus on scholar achievement was prioritizing curriculum adoption cycles and supporting teachers with high-quality curriculum and resources across all grade levels and in all subjects. In addition, new and veteran teachers alike shared their interest in focusing time on teaching scholars versus writing curriculum, as well as consistently focusing on a goal for several years to become confident and good at something. So creating efficient systems with common curriculum to maximize teacher energy was a key highlight from Dr. Campbell's 100-day entry plan. In addition to our theory of action and Dr. Campbell's 100-day plan, implementing a guaranteed and viable curriculum supports Sub-End 1, graduation and advancement, to ensure each scholar graduates with the skills and confidence to access college, career, and other post-secondary options and be successful. And second, our Sub-Ends 2, providing scholars with resources that attend to both the rigor of the Washington State English Language Arts standards and accelerating scholars' independent reading levels to support their ability to excel on any assessment, including state and district measures. And last is our alignment of the adoption to our strategic plan. Scholars selected Goal 4 as their #1 priority. It is our duty to deliver on that promise in providing them with the skills and the knowledge of high-quality, culturally relevant teaching and learning experiences to master all of their subjects. Our English language arts adoption is a key district strategy. Standards-aligned, culturally responsive teaching and learning under Pillar 1 encompasses the following 3 district signature strategies. 1, develop and implement with fidelity a culturally competent, standards-aligned, guaranteed, and viable curriculum in all subjects. 2, create and align curriculum, assessment, and grading systems to state standards. And 3, design a system to ensure high-quality implementation of the adopted curriculum and its alignment to standards.
Explain what the D and the S mean.
The D means that is a district signature strategy, and the S means that that is a school signature strategy. Bringing teachers and specialists together to work in partnership with Teaching for Learning leaders to write curriculum guides and principal guides with these resources will help foster this success. Sean Simpson will now discuss a high-level overview of the research that we used with the adoption process.
Thank you, James. Research, both locally and nationally, demonstrates that a guaranteed and viable curriculum is the #1 factor impacting student achievement. A guaranteed and viable curriculum is a key equity strategy that is aligned to and supports the enactment of our strategic plan and brings to life our core beliefs for all scholars. Guaranteed means that all scholars have the same access to the same rigorous and standards-aligned content, knowledge, and skills across all schools. And viable means that the curriculum is doable within a school year. Guaranteed and viable does not mean scripted curriculum. The Teaching for Learning department will be working in partnership with 9 through 12 ELA teachers and specialists to write curriculum guides beginning this summer to support the implementation of the adopted curriculum and resources. Over the course of the next several years, the Teaching for Learning department will lead curriculum adoption cycles. Key points include, but are not limited to, the following areas that support a high school ELA adoption. First, Federal Way Public Schools has not formally adopted common high school ELA curriculum in over 20 years. Second, Federal Way Public Schools does not have common resources that meet the rigor of Washington State ELA standards. Third, Federal Way Public Schools needs to ensure that we have high-quality literature that is relevant and reflects the scholars that we serve. And most saliently, Federal Way Public Schools student achievement data shows that more than half of our scholars are not reading at grade level when they enter 9th grade. In addition to SBA data, a sampling of 9th grade ELA teachers from each of our 4 high schools piloted the independent reading level assessment with approximately 1,000 9th grade scholars. Of these scholars assessed using the independent reading level assessment in the fall of 2016, 5% were reading at or above grade level, while 45% were reading 2 years below, and 50% were reading 3 or more years below. This data demonstrates that literacy achievement is a critical focus area for all stakeholders in Federal Way Public Schools to ensure all our scholars have the opportunity to achieve at high levels by growing our scholars to read at or above grade level. Now I would like to introduce Dia Bailey and James Diggins, who will share the adoption journey.
The journey of the ELA 912 adoption was rigorous, challenging, and exciting. It began with invitations to all staff to participate, from teachers to specialists to school administrators. In addition, the fall began the high school ELA IRLA pilot with over 40 teachers learning about the IRLA and assessing scholars at their independent reading levels. Later in the fall, in November, the 28-member committee, of which was 74% comprised of teacher voice, convened to review 7 different ELA curriculum and listen to curriculum vendor presentations to learn more about the resources. In early winter, the ELA committee narrowed it down to inquiry by design and collections for ELA resources to pilot as potential on-grade level curriculum.
January and February, volunteered teachers piloted both the resources and received professional learning to support a successful field test of the resources. In addition, TFL visited each of the 4 high schools to hold information and feedback sessions to listen and learn about teachers' hopes and concerns. In order to capture more stakeholder voice, TFL surveyed scholars, teachers, instructional coaches, school principals to learn more about their experiences with the resources. March was a culminating month of events. Pilot teachers were brought together by TFL staff to process the survey data and make recommendations of strengths and gaps in regards to IRLA, IBD, and collections. TFL then held a teacher community open house session. On March 22nd, the 9 through 12 ELA committee, with 100% consensus, recommended IBD and IRLA as high school ELA adoption resources to Dr. Campbell, and on March 29th, the Instructional Materials Committee approved IBD and IRLA with 100% consensus. Teachers played a significant role in their courage and leadership during the adoption journey.
I'd like to highlight for you just how rigorous the process was to narrow down our choices in terms of resources. The ELA Adoption Committee reviewed 7 resources as outlined in the slide and narrowed it down to 5 resources for vendors to then give their presentations, and then we went through an incredibly rigorous process to then narrow it down to our final 2. But each of these 7 resources were vetted using the following evaluation tools. There's the Instructional Materials Evaluation Tool that is aligned to the rigor of the standards and the key instructional shifts of the Common Core. We also made sure that we did an audit to see that each resource was aligned with the Washington State ELA standards that are also aligned with the Common Core. We did a cultural bias review adapted from OSBI, and we also wanted to see would these resources, or which resources would best equip teachers to become proficient or distinguished along the CEL 5D evaluation rubric. Inquiry by Design and American Reading Company's independent reading level assessment and resources were selected unanimously by our committee, and that was an incredibly rigorous process. I'd like to introduce Shannon Harris to tell you more about Inquiry by Design.
Pilot teachers and adoption committee members lifted up the rationale base for selecting Inquiry by Design. First, the curriculum builds critical thinking, reading, and writing skills that will prepare our scholars for the future. Second, the inquiry approach to the instructional pedagogy is student-centered. Third, the text selections provide access to complex texts that reflect the diversity of the FWPS demographic. Our scholars will begin to see themselves in the literature they read. Fourth, IBD was designed for Washington State ELA learning standards for college and career readiness. And finally, IBD supports a balanced literacy model to provide scholars with on-grade level, rigorous text, and independent reading level novels connected to skills and themes they will be discussing in classes. IBD is grounded in research to support scholar achievement. Specifically, in the Alameda School District in California, IBD was implemented with fidelity, and the district saw their ELA test scores rise to 84% of students passing, while the state average maintained at 48% passing. This was an increase of 6% over their scores from the previous school year. Research-based instructional strategies are echoed in the IBD model, where students routinely practice working with complex text and the academic vocabulary contained within. Teachers are most excited about the strong commitment that IBD has to teacher training to get us to be proficient and distinguished in FWPS's instructional framework.
A strong, explicit design to standards is essential in identifying a guaranteed and viable curriculum. Inquiry by Design curriculum was designed for the Washington State ELA standards as also connected to the Common Core. As you can see in the chart, at each grade level, there is over 80% overall alignment with each of the strands in the Common Core. I'd like to invite Jamarcus Springfield to describe to you how we involve teacher and scholar voice in the decision.
Through surveys, TFL elicited both teacher and scholar voice for the IBD. Our teacher highlighted in reflecting on IBD, the high cognitive demand sets high expectation for students with clearly laid out lesson plans. Another teacher shared, scholars are engaged in authentic task with challenging text. The course develops scholars' capacities for future advanced studies.
And I'd like to continue with a little bit of our scholars' reflections. So scholars reflected, it helped me with my reading. It also challenged me with words I didn't know. And we got to work in groups because it helped me brainstorm ideas. To invite up James Diggins.
All right. The rationale for the Independent Reading Level Assessment, or IRLA, includes the following important points. This is a research-based reading assessment, and the IRLA resources are aligned to standards. There are classroom-leveled books of high interest to support scholars' reading at their independent level. The one-on-one conferring, which I know firsthand is essential in its instructional design, designed to accelerate scholar and literacy achievement. Teachers and principals have an online data system that allows key stakeholders to monitor and celebrate achievement that is streamlined to FWPS baseline edge. And this balanced literacy approach to teaching and learning provides for scholar choice, ownership, and personally as a teacher to personalize and differentiate literacy instruction for my scholars.
Similar to Inquiry by Design alignment to standards, the IRLA alignment to standards is strong with over 80% alignment in reading for literature, reading informational text, and language. The IRLA, in partnership with Inquiry by Design, will provide our scholars with high-quality standards-line resources that attend to the on-grade level rigor and the differentiated literary support to accelerate achievement for all. And as someone who's taught in the Federal Way Public Schools for over 15 years, this is the first time we actually have the tools to effectively differentiate reading instruction for all scholars.
Teacher voice was strong with the IRLA resources because it's a way to support our scholars in growing as readers. As one teacher shared, the kids get to choose their own books and they're actually reading. Another teacher shared, this is a logical foundation for students and reasonable expectation of growth that can be tracked through the student's entire time in school.
Scholars also shared, It was at my own level, so I was able to peacefully read it. I like that it pointed out how much I need to read. Implementing independent reading with targeted instruction will support scholars in reaching their reading goals.
Curriculum guide writing is an essential part of providing teacher with guidance, of facilitating scholar learning of the standards, of using the adopted resources. It's important for us to note that we are not adopting a scripted or prescribed curriculum. Rather, we are excited to have teachers and district leaders partner to create curriculum guides that will identify the common standards, the SOAP and sequence, the recommended teaching moves, the common learning targets, success criteria, and give options for differentiated strategies to meet the needs of scholars. In addition, teachers will extend instruction within the curriculum guides to meet the needs of their scholars, using the curriculum guides as a pathway so that their art of teaching can really shine throughout this process.
Providing access and choice to high-quality literature by reading extended text and novels is an integral part of the ELA adoption for our scholars. ERLA classroom libraries will be purchased for ELA and specialist classrooms to provide scholars with fiction and nonfiction novels at their independent reading level for designated time within the class to read and meet with their teachers about their goals and growth. In addition, IBD classroom libraries will be selected to provide 2 to 3 novels per grade level identified by teachers and integrated into literacy instruction. Therefore, Common ELA 9 through 12 curriculum will provide all scholars with access to high-quality literature, including novels.
High-quality professional learning follows Federal Public Schools' theory of action to ensure the successful implementation of the ELA guaranteed and viable curriculum and resources for all key stakeholders. TFL will provide 2 week-long summer literacy institutes, one in June and one in August, for teachers, specialists, principals to choose to attend one of them. Curriculum guide writing teams will collaborate in July and August for a series of 8 days to prepare curriculum guides for teachers for the fall implementation. In August, the Teaching for Learning department will provide principals with training in regards to the adopted resources, including principal guides. In addition, high-quality professional learning is comprehensive, consistent, data-driven, and relevant. Year-long professional learning will include job-embedded learning cycles for teachers and principals, principal monthly professional learning, and family education sessions.
I just want to add the principal piece. You often hear, when you think about a resource and the teachers are just getting materials, we're creating resources for the principals because the principals are key to supporting teachers. That's a part of our theory of action.
Thank you. Recently, Dr. Campbell approved the following implementation plan put forth by the ELA 9 through 12 Adoption Committee. The 2-year implementation approval is to ensure high support and quality implementation following our theory of action. Phase 1 will include for the 2017-2018 school year, first, all English language arts teachers in grades 9 through 12 in core ELA will commit to teach 2 of the 4 IBD microcourses, 1 first semester and 1 second semester. Early implementers, including the curriculum guide writing team, will commit to teach all 4 IBD microcourses. Next, all 9th and 10th grade ELA teachers will implement the independent reading level assessment along with the on-grade level resources. In addition, and last, early implementers at grades 11 and grades 12 will get to choose to opt in to implement the independent reading level assessment. For the second year, Phase 2 for the 2018-2019 school year, all 9 through 12 ELA teachers in core ELA will implement all 4 IBD microcourses. In addition, Phase 2, second year, all 9 through 12 ELA teachers in core ELA will also implement the independent reading level assessment for full implementation. A 2-year implementation plan honors the voices of the committee. It focuses on the priority data of improving scholar achievement and allows for capacity building of all key stakeholders in our organization. Now, James Crawford will share the ELA adoption budget for this 2-year phase-in.
So in reflecting on the costs associated with this English language arts adoption, you'll see a breakdown of the budget implications. These costs for Inquiry by Design include scholar materials, teacher materials, professional development for implementation, leveled classroom libraries, and a custom novel study development based on 4,000 scholars and 80 teachers at an estimated cost of $840,000. In addition, our ERLA estimate includes 10 baskets of books per classroom based on 80 teachers at the cost of $3,000 per teacher for an estimated cost of $367,000. This is a combined estimated total cost of $1.3 million worth of 9 through 12 ELA adopted materials. So in closing, the TFL department appreciates the voice of teachers and their service on the committee, as well as the pilot to help make the recommendations of the highest quality resources to prepare all of our scholars for success in mastering the core of ELA and preparing them for the next grade level and post-high school success. Thank you to Dr. Campbell and the board for your steadfast leadership in supporting adoption cycles to ensure a guaranteed and viable curriculum to support our scholars, our teachers, our administration, and our families.
Any questions, board members?
I just need a little clarity, so I may not be the only one, but there were 2 slides on the ERLA and on the ELA adoption where you were showing the percentage of alignment to standards. And I'll just show on page 10, it's the slide around ERLA. So you have the reading literature, reading information, and language, and then the overall alignment. And so I guess I just need help in understanding if there is 100% alignment in reading literature and there's 50% in information and 50% in language. I understand the overall alignment is 83 or above 80%. But what does what does that 50% mean? Does that make sense to one? What would you look for to increase that 50% or to support that?
Come on up. As she's coming up, I will tell you, you will never find any resource that is 100%.
Right.
Just from doing curriculum adoptions, but I would defer to Sean on this. It's page 10.
And not in detail, but I'm just curious because I'm thinking 50%. I'm like, okay, so then. Sean, does that make sense, my question, or maybe I'm the only one?
Well, this is also, I think, a similar question that we attended to last year during the K through 8 ELA adoption. And then when you think about 50%, it's about the access to specifically literary as well as informational text resources.
Okay.
And so we look for a balance in that. And when you look for a comprehensive suite of ELA curriculum, we look for a balance both on the on-grade level as well as the lifted up curriculum that will actually accelerate kiddos through kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. So basically it's a balance, knowing what Dr. Campbell just reiterated is that not one curriculum will have a complete 100%, but when you look at 2 different resources that you partner together in that manner, it will help in terms of ensuring that we have alignment to all of the standards. And so I hope that just shares, but that's just an accurate representation of when you look at those particular resources for the independent reading level assessment, the balance of literary and non-literary text.
And bringing together ERLA and IBD together.
That's what I'm
why
asking.
you
So
don't
together
adopt
it
one
would
thing.
increase that. Okay,
Yep.
thank you. I just, when I see 50%, I say half, and I'm like,
That's not good.
Yeah.
I would also add that when we go through the 2-year implementation, we're going to go through a program review that requires us to take a look at where the holes are in the curriculum so that we can create some supplemental materials that'll fill in those holes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to comment that when you hear the commitment that I'm hearing from the district team, and it's the theory of action, from the district team and from our teachers that have been on this committee. I know the hard work this has involved, and I'm just impressed with the way in which this has been scripted, and to keep going is not easy. And I honestly sense the commitment and the hard work that's gone into this. And I just want to say bravo to all of you. Thank you. And it follows up with what you said earlier, Carol. It takes a team. And without that team, we're not going to be charging forward in the way we need to.
Director Eto?
Just in terms of commentary, what I take away, it's a collaborative assessment, came out with a unanimous choice. It's a rigorous program that affords choice, which equates, in my view, engagement, and it removes any cultural biases that might have existed in prior select novels. I did sense that some of the folks that came in February almost felt a loss of tradition, but when we're 7th place out of 8 schools in terms of English language, that tradition ain't working. So I really appreciate the hard work that was done and the explanations that were given.
Director Gregory? Okay. Thank you all for your hard work and your presentation.
I would just like to thank the team. I specifically want to call out Sean in terms of your leadership and really helping to frame this up and being steadfast in terms of really outlining really solid processes. I want to remind the board that we have this process we used last year when we did the elementary adoption. And so as we go through adoptions, on the front end, you may find folks who will say, this isn't going to work, but we're going to use the same kind of process. And you're going to see teachers involved. You're going to see us using rubrics. You're going to see us using pilots to assess. And so that is what you can count on. And so I just want to thank you for sticking with the process and being very sort of that guide on the side and helping our teachers to really land on the right rigorous instructional material. And thank you, James, for your leadership as well. Teachers, thank you for the time and the hours that you put in. More importantly, thank you for being willing to think about what your practice needed to shift so that our scholars can improve, because we know the data says that we can improve. I've never been more inspired by a group of teachers. And Stacy, I'm always impressed when I hear you talk about the work with your passion and expertise and skill. Thank you very much.
So board members, I'd entertain a motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve the 9-12 ELA adoption of curricular materials and professional learning.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, Dr. Campbell, next item on the agenda is the Federal Way STEM and STEAM Lighthouse Programming presentation.
So I'm going to invite our two principals up with our LIO, Dr. Collison, as well as Jane Miller and Megan Walker. And they're going to talk to you about what's going to be happening that's pretty exciting at Woodmont and Nautilus K-8. Dr. Collison, take it away.
Good evening, Board President McAnalloy, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. This evening, we're looking forward to sharing an update about the upcoming program shifts at our 2 K-8 schools to reflect a STEM and STEAM focus. Presenting with me is Jane Miller, Director of Instructional Technology, Jordan Nevin, Principal of Woodmont K-8, Stacy Lucas, Principal at Nautilus K-8, and Megan Walker. Thank you. The purpose of our presentation tonight is to describe the rationale, the vision, the progress to date, and the next steps related to the implementation of our STEM and STEAM programs at Nautilus and Woodmont, which actually aligns with several goals in our strategic plan, 1, 3, 4, and 5. As you can see, they are listed above. One of the great things about what we're doing here is this signature strategy, which calls out STEM and STEAM. Education for our scholars is actually a signature strategy in all 4 of these goals. So why would we do this? What's the rationale for bringing this in? It's not a brand new fad or something new that we want to try out that we read about on the internet. It's actually a really important opportunity for our scholars. When you look at the job market for several years now, but also the projections for the future, the STEM jobs, STEAM jobs are projected to grow at about 2 times the rate of the other jobs that are out there for our kids. Additionally, for those who go to work in STEM and STEAM fields, they tend to earn on average about 26% more than their counterparts. And even those who go through and get an education in STEM but choose not to use it are more desirable to employers because of the skill set and the thinking that they learn as they go through the process. Our vision for these programs. Many people, when they think of STEM and STEAM, think of the isolated disciplines, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And there are certainly things that make them unique and separate from each other. But actually, it's the blend of them together around real-world issues that's the important part of a STEM and STEAM education. Done well, scholars also learn things like creativity. We put tough problems in front of them. We ask them to solve them. We ask them to come up with new and unique solutions. We ask them to gather and analyze data. And we ask them to communicate and collaborate with each other. Once we've done this and gotten it off to a good start at Woodmont and Nautilus, our hope is that all district schools can benefit from what our teachers and kids have learned. We want others to come in and look at how it's done and be able to take these practices back to the other schools so that all of our scholars can benefit. In addition to this, it's really important to emphasize the cross-content connections. Again, we tend to think of things in isolation. Math is a math classroom. Science is a science classroom, but really they have much in common, and the skills that you learn in these disciplines transfer across most disciplines. A couple that we can call out on this slide is modeling. As you'll see, modeling is called for, and these are pulled from the standards affiliated with these subject areas in all 5 of these disciplines. You model in science, you model in engineering, you model in art, you model in math. Additionally, you communicate, and that's kind of a no-brainer, but you communicate in all of these disciplines as well. We want our scholars to be able to practice these skills in a lot of different settings. If you look at any job that any of us do, we're called on to do these things not in isolation. You don't do science for part of your day and then go do something else. They're woven together, and if we do this right, and we will, our scholars will have an opportunity to practice them across disciplines and be prepared for rigorous college education as well as employment afterward.
So important to the STEM and STEAM PBL implementation is understanding the shifts in teaching and learning. Notice on the left are our current program structures, while the right shows the changes. As you can see, the first 2 rows show the focus on state and district assessments used to measure student achievement and using the district curriculum guides. These stay the same, with only slight variations to the guides to meet project outcomes. While the next 3 rows discuss the integrated approach to content and student voice, the last row is notable in regards to the connection to Pillar 2, safe climate and strong relationships with families and community. Our next slide shows specific examples of what project-based learning entails. Notice the connection to the signature strategy with a reference to real-world relevant opportunities. To the right is the evident in each of the bullets. Most notable is providing our scholars choice while solving authentic, community-based problems, using technology to support learning, and intentional connection to college, career, and civic life.
We have been working on this project for over a year now. It started last April, so I wanted to give you a quick update on the partnerships that we've selected as a team this year and the professional development opportunities that we have mapped out for the next several years for our teachers and leaders. Oops. So speaking to that, our partners are EduCurious and the New Tech Network. Next year, EduCurious will be supporting grades K1, 2, and 4 at both sites, and the New Tech Network will be supporting grades 3, 5, and our middle school 6, 7, and 8, as well as both partners supporting our leadership development. This slide represents our rollout over the next 3 years. We're currently in the planning phase. We've been doing this work, like I said, beginning last April and on through to current day. A couple of highlights in years 1 and 2 are some summer opportunities for our scholars to really dig into some technology skills and just excitement around the STEM work. as well as continuing our professional development opportunities for our teachers in the summer months, and ongoing coaching that will happen in our buildings for our teachers and leaders.
So first, I want to say thank you to Dr. Campbell and Dr. Pfeiffer, Dr. Collison, Jane Miller, our Instructional Technology Department, and our TFL Department for the support that you've given us. I know that I speak for Woodmont students, Woodmont scholars, and Nautilus scholars, that we're very thankful that we have all the support at our schools. So we have tried to get the families in to let them know a little bit about where we're moving towards. And we had at Nautilus a family night on April 12th. And 1 week later, we had one at Woodmont K-8. The families came. We had representatives from EduCurious and from New Tech Network. And we presented, the main part was to show them the difference between a traditional school and what a project-based learning school would be like. But the exciting part was at the end when we were able to let our scholars and our families work with actual STEM projects, and they got to see what it's like to have hands-on activities and integrate science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And you're probably wondering how this all will expand to the rest of the school district.
So I'm talking about one of the ways that we are taking some things that we're trying out in our STEM choices and bringing them to our STEM for All via our computer science pathway, including some demonstrations. So as we expand STEM experiences for all scholars in our district, we need to identify the core technologies that we're going to support. We've selected Sphero because it can be used for science, math, engineering, and computer science applications. It's accessible to scholars and staff with limited technology experience and can challenge those at advanced levels. And it supports scholars with a wide range of content standards. So you can see our basic 3-year plan for expanding Sphero in our district. In year 1, schools were chosen based on their STEM exploration night attendance and equal distribution across our high school feeder patterns.
Megan, can you just stop and tell us what it is? Just kind of give us a simple definition of what this is.
So a Sphero is a spherical robot that can be programmed using an app on a smartphone or an iPad or another kind of device. It can be programmed in a variety of ways to do a variety of tasks. It also contains sensors that can detect things like velocity and acceleration and the orientation of the Sphero as it moves, which provides valuable data that our students can analyze in their science classes. And we're going to give you more of a demonstration of what that can look like at different grade levels in just a moment. So in our first year of our plan, there's going to be a team representing some of the first schools along with Teaching for Learning. We'll be traveling to Cobb County, Georgia to observe high-quality district-wide Sphero implementation to inform our work. And then in each year of this plan, we'll develop curriculum guides to support teachers in implementing Sphero with an ongoing feedback and revision process, and we will increase access to Spheros to additional schools across Federal Way. Now, for the demo. So an example based on the standard shown in the K2 column, Jake and Jane are using draw coding to make their Spheros hit a target while analyzing the distance that each one went.
You're welcome to come up if you'd like to.
So following the first trial to meet the standard, they would each compare the distance their Sphero traveled to their target and adjust their program to hit the target on their next trial.
So they're doing programming,
So
actually programming.
To meet a math standard. Next, we'll see an example of block coding to meet standard. Jake and Jane each coded a square at different speeds. From this, they can calculate the perimeter. So following this experience, students would be able to analyze how the perimeter and area are changing based on the speed of the Sphero traveling the different sides of the square. So another example of an application for math that is also increasing their sophistication in coding from a draw coding application to a block coding application. The last column shows how scholars could meet a computer science standard at the high school level by using text-based programming. In this case, this program is part of a program that would allow the Sphero to respond to different ways of being moved by changing colors or making a certain motion. So one of the greatest benefits of Sphero robotic computer programming is the opportunity for scholars to meet standard while increasing their programming sophistication in an engaging and relevant way.
She's like, you're not going to get on that block.
I just want to add that we see this Sphero robotics model as a way to build upon our code, but to have this in all of our elementary schools over the next few years so that our elementary scholars have experience with coding and programming right out of the gate.
So
Can
board
we
members,
answer
any
any
questions? Yeah. Thank you all very much. Appreciate the presentation.
I want to thank both principals of Nautilus as well as Woodmont. They have been so focused and leading this so fearlessly and with such skill. Stacy and Jordan, thank you very much, and we're excited to be on the journey with you. You're an incredible example of what instructional leadership looks like to transform a school and take it to the next level. Thank you.
And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.